Hey everybody, I'm doing a quick faceless tutorial video about the creative process of scripturedoodle, and kind of it's just an example of how you could maybe get started or go about working through a verse creatively. Okay, so first of all, you're going to choose a verse, and I was reading this verse the other day in my quick study time, and I just loved it. I got a visual right away, so that was exciting. I don't always do that, but I'm going to read it to you. It's Psalm 31:19, and it says, "Oh, how abundant is your goodness, which you have stored up for those who fear you, and worked for those who take refuge in you, in the sight of the children of mankind." And I just love that because so many times in my life, I know I've seen the goodness of God, and I love how it says, "And He worked for those who take refuge in you," because He does work those good things for us. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to choose a key word in your verse that really kind of gives a visual. And so I chose the word goodness, and I don't know why, but I just got this visual of these gems, and I'll show you my really quick, you can see my really quick doodle through it, but I got this just visual of this pile of sort of like gemstones piled up, and I just thought that was a cool but a little different from what I normally would illustrate, just to represent the goodness of God. And so this was my very quick, someday I'm gonna draw this. And so I kind of do that sometimes. I'll read a verse and I'll say, oh, I want to doodle that. So this was my 2-second scribble. And so then sometimes I'll go straight into making like a finished drawing, and sometimes that's it. It's not always long and drawn out and excellent. A lot of times it's messy and quick, but it's that visual that kind of sparks your memory. And so then what I did is I Googled a pile of jewels, and that's just a great way to give you a visual. And I don't copy artwork, but if you do Google pile of jewels, you'll just see like all these pictures of these shiny gems. And so that was an easy visual to say, like, how are they gonna overlap on one another, and kind of spark the creativity. So then after my quick sketch, I moved to a drawing on, this is on watercolor paper, and I'm gonna be using these Caran d'Ache, I'm sure I said it wrong, water soluble wax pastels. A friend of mine gave me these, and I'm not great with pastels, but I just want to try them out, and I just want to encourage you, like, even if you're not great at something, don't be afraid to give it a try and mess up. I'm sure that this won't be flawless. So, but anyway, you can get these at a lot of fine art stores. We'll play with those next. But so then you want to kind of create a composition. So I decided to start with a square to kind of give me a frame. Sometimes a large piece of paper can be overwhelming, so I decided to stick with a piece of paper, and then I drew a sort of square around it. And these jewels are going to overlap the square, so you can see my lines. I haven't erased them all. If I'm going to do something in the background, I will draw this shape first, and then I'll kind of just stack on top of that. You can see this one's overlapping this circle gem, and then this one's overlapping, and it will sort of give it this layered look, which will end up hopefully looking pretty cool. And you can see I only chose half of the verse, and mostly that was just for space. I really like the second half of the verse as well. So I always note that if I'm only going to choose like the first half of the verse, I'll say, when I write it, I'll say Psalm 31:19a, and that's just a great way to let people know, hey, there's more to this verse, and also to honor the context of the Bible. More and more I just see people like citing scripture that's not scripture, and it's pretty bizarre. So try to keep in context what it is that you're sharing. So anyway, I have started this with pencil, and then you can see that I chose 2 different fonts. I think that's a great way to kind of to launch into your lettering, especially. I sort of have these go-to like block letters, maybe all caps, and then this sort of flowy script. My normal handwriting is not pretty like this. I work hard to make it look good, so that is just like practice. And so I chose 2 different phrases to sort of emphasize more than the others. I chose how abundant, and then I chose the words fear you. You could have chosen goodness, which is kind of what we're illustrating here, this idea of goodness through the gems and rubies. But I'll kind of leave that up to you. That's your artistic license. So I'm going to take a few minutes to outline this and pencil, and then we'll speed it up so it's quicker for you. I'm using a Pigma Micron. I said pencil, but I mean pen. Using a Pigma Micron 01. This is probably the smallest width ink pen they have. They have all kinds of, and the numbers are on the top. 05 is one that I use all the time. This is 01. It's just the one I grabbed. So, okay. Okay, so now that I have it outlined in pen, I'm going to quickly erase in pencil. I like the Prismacolor Magic Rub erasers, and this is sort of like my technique of, well, I'm not saying but it is just sort of the style that I end up doing. I often will start with some kind of rough sketches, and then I'll outline everything in the felt tip pen. I usually do that in my scripturedoodle work, but not necessarily in my fine art or acrylic paintings. But I feel like my lines are crisper when I'm using the pen, and so it doesn't always look just how it's gonna look when I do it in pencil. But it also makes it better for watercolor because my lines are probably too dark in pencil to watercolor over. If you are gonna watercolor straight over your pencil, keep in mind you want to have really light lines, and then they won't kind of show through. All right, so now I'm gonna start with these wax crayons, and I don't really have many pointers to give because I really don't know a whole lot about them, but one thing I'll say is if you did sort of search a Google image, you can always refer back to that and have a look and kind of make note of where the light is hitting each gem, what colors they are, and the cuts in the stone, sort of like how they kind of play along with the light and all that stuff. So I'm going to just do a quick outline on this one, and then I'll play around with the paintbrush over top of it. So these really feel like kind of like a crayon when you're using it. Like I said, they're a wax pastel, so they're great. They feel like a crayon, and then you'll go over them in the paintbrush. I'm just going to use this small flat brush and just a really small dab of water, and then you can just sort of follow the lines that you've made. Now I'm just sort of like filling this whole thing in because I'm going to come back with a darker color, but if you want any white showing in these, you get to keep that in mind, and don't go over it at all with your paintbrush. Just leave it white and sort of try to work around it. This I'm sort of going to fill in all the way in this magenta color, and then I'll come back once this dries. And that's one thing I noticed about these water crayons, is that you can come back once this dries, and you could come back, like I'm going to come back with a black over this gem, and then it'll kind of give some dimension. Let's see. As you're working, sort of balance the colors you're using. So if you have, I'm going to do this golden color right here. Keep in mind the different colors that you have. I only have 8 colors here, so I'm going to kind of play around with quite a few. But if you're wanting to sort of balance like warm colors and cool colors, I might choose a blue to go back here to kind of make this yellow pop. The other thing you want to keep in mind as you're drawing is this idea of like light and shadow. You can see for this one I've really only colored the left-hand side of the stone, and then I'm just going to come back and really barely fill in this part of the yellow to give the idea that the light is sort of hitting it, and there's the shadow on one side. And then let's try and come back with this black here now that it's dry. So right now I'm looking at the image and seeing like where the shadows are on the original stone that I was using. I'm trying to mimic those shadows here. So obviously, like I said, it's not perfect. It's just a rough sort of idea, but I think it's neat that you could come back with this, and you could also come back with a darker violet or you could come back with like a blue maybe on this, and you don't even necessarily have to come back with your watercolor or with the brush turning it into paint. You could really just come back and have this sort of crayon look on top of it. Okay, let's try blue for this one, and then I'll finish it up and sort of speed it up for you guys to see in a minute. If you do have a couple different color blues, you can kind of play around with that. If you don't have a couple color blues and you want to kind of create this variation, you could try adding a bit of green next to the blue, like in another square. It's kind of what I'm going to do, and then it'll have a slightly different look. You could also try maybe some white down here to do like a light blue. That will hopefully change a smidge once I get the, yeah, see, that's kind of going to have light blue once the water's on it, whereas this will be light, but it's not going to have that chalky tone that the white, this section with the white will. You can see this little spot in here is more of a turquoise color, and then I'm going to stick with green and blue on this so that I don't add too much variation. I thought about adding purple to that to give like a navy, but I think I'll stick with blue and green and the white, which is giving me enough variation on this gem, and maybe on the next one I'll try blue and purple together. Okay, so I'm going to kind of finish this up and we'll speed it up for you to see, and then if I notice anything, I'll mention it at the end. Okay, so I've kind of finished up a real simple little scripture doodle, and I like the minimal background, so I debated whether to add some blue in the background. You can see I made a little dot right there, but you can kind of see I like the clean look of the background being white, but you could always add in like a blue or some sort of light neutral I would choose. So the only other thing I noticed is that when you're adding like the light to dark variation of your color on this purple gem, I knew I wanted this section right here to be super, super light. So I started with a clean brush, and I really barely had any sort of pigment on it. I think I just started with nothing and just maybe pulled a tiny bit from over here, and that got me that lightest color purple. If you start with too much purple, then you can't really get that light tone back. So keep that in mind. And then lastly, I came back on this green one with some black, and you can see that I didn't even go back over it with a paintbrush to kind of liquefy it. Like on this one, it has that dark, but then I went over with the paintbrush, and this one sort of has that rough look on it. The really, really dark tone that you won't get once you sort of add the water to it. So I'm just coming back to sort of see what that looks like. I'm not sure black is ideal on this, but it really felt like black when I was kind of looking at my like the image online that I was working from. It really looked like black was the other color that was shining through on a lot of these. So anyway, just a quick little video. I want to show you this again. These are the watercolor, well, they're not watercolor, they're water wax pastels that I got, and I'm just using a really simple flat brush. And so try new things, guys, even if you're not great at it. It's just for fun and play and get creative with the Lord. Okay, have a great day.